Hi, welcome to the Three English Experts. I'm Dave.
I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Birgit.
And welcome to this episode.
Three English Experts is your English podcast to help you speak better English and create a positive and happy mindset for your English learning journey. Hi everyone, and welcome back to this episode. Today we're talking about answering questions, how to answer maybe some tricky questions. Maybe you're in a meeting, you're in a presentation. We can prepare for presentations that people also panic about the last part. What if they ask questions? What if I don't understand? How to answer tricky questions? It is something you can also prepare. Of course, you don't always know what the questions will be, but certain strategies to answer these questions you can prepare in advance. So that's what we're working on today. So I'm going to hand over to Dave, and he's going to give us some communication tips on how to deal with these tricky questions.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Rebecca. Absolutely. Yeah, that's often when I do my webinars, these are the things that people worry about, how to deal with questions, and often tricky questions. You could also call them maybe even loaded questions. That's an important word in this whole context. Loaded in this case, meaning the people are emotional. Maybe they want to accuse you of something that you did or didn't do by asking you in that way or form. And of course, then feel then personally attacked. And that can, of course, make you even more nervous and unsure how to deal with it. So first of all, I think you could think about three different ways of dealing with questions to keep it simple. And then afterwards, I'm going to introduce you to a special sort of tool that will break it down even more. So first of all, very simply, you can just answer the question directly. Secondly, maybe you're not quite sure what the question is aiming at, or you're not sure if you've understood the question correctly as they wanted to ask it. So second point would be to clarify it. And then thirdly, finally, is to sort of move it somewhere, maybe later in the presentation, maybe not doing it in the presentation at all, or maybe asking somebody else or handing the question over to somebody else in your team or whatever that might be. So moving it in some way or form. So they're the three main points. And then you can get what I call my D8 cheat sheet. We are looking at on the screen right now. So we're all seeing my screen. And this is called the D8 cheat sheet, which we will have for you in the notes, or not in the notes, but in the Padlet that we have. So if you want to have a look at this, then you can sign up for our newsletter and you get access to that on our Padlet. So this is the D8 cheat sheet, and it says D8 because all of the words that we're going to talk about start with the letter D. So the first one is deal. What do you think that means?
Oh, hello. Maybe I come in here. Hello, everybody. Of course, I have the cheat sheet in front of me, and it's a very fancy name, the D8 cheat sheet. Oh, I like that. Could also mean the Dave 8 cheat
Oh,
sheet.
yeah. Oh, I like that. Yes,
Yeah.
let's change Dave 8.
So number one is deal, answer directly. For example, I'm glad you asked that, and give the answer of the question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
answer.
Oh, you like that? Okay, yeah.
Well, thank you for asking that.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to acknowledge the question in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way, and people probably will forget about this. This is a super tip. So number one is a very good tip. Thanks for asking that. I'm glad you asked that. Thanks for putting that question forward. Yeah.
Maybe an interesting one here is the difference in formality as well, depending on how formal the meeting is, because you could say, I'm glad you raised that. So to raise that point or raise that topic. If it's a little bit more informal, conversational, then we could use the phrasal verb, glad you brought it up, to bring something up. So that's another variant of that one as well. Number two is define, which means, Rebecca?
Yeah. So define, meaning define the question, clarify what does that question mean? Sometimes people ask things and you don't really know what they want. So you could say something like, let me check if I understood that correctly, or just to make sure I've understood what you mean. So this sort of clarifying, defining what is the question, because also you want to answer the right question. You don't want to answer something that they didn't really ask, because that's also kind of pointless.
And I think we can also put this under define. If you haven't understood the question, it's not the end of the world to ask again. Say, sorry, I didn't understand it correctly. Could you please repeat it? I think that's also down to defining.
And you could also like summarize. So you're asking me if, and then you can kind of repeat it in the way you think the question is, kind of summarizing to check that you've understood properly.
I think that's the big point, because often, for some reason, when people ask questions, they go into a 2-minute monologue about something, and you're thinking, what are they trying to ask me here? And how many questions are there in one question? So I think, that's firstly very good to ask, what are you asking? If you don't understand, what are you asking me? And secondly, to break it up and to put it into your own words, so that hopefully you get a yes or no. So great ideas. Absolutely. Number 3 is diffuse. Birgit.
Yeah, acknowledging emotion and uncertainty. So I think this is what we said about the loaded question. So if you can sense some kind of emotion. Diffuse, it may be interesting for listeners who haven't come across the fuse is the Steckdose, isn't it? So it's like Strom, is with Strom. Diffuse, that's a fair point. So this is very good thing to say, okay, I understand you are bringing it up. You have a problem maybe with it. That's a fair point. Let's take a moment to unpack it. And then you can start explaining maybe your point of view, your arguments.
Yeah, the diffuse is like a bomb, isn't it? And chef, because the bomb could go off. If it's emotional, it can kind of explode. So you're diffusing the bomb, basically. It's making it less emotional, or just acknowledging the emotion in the question, potentially showing that you understand why somebody is upset or annoyed or emotional. Yeah.
But of course, that's challenging for people who are not.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing they would fear most. Yeah. But there will be tips later. Maybe that can help you to deal with that. Yeah.
I think this is actually probably the most useful one, because I think that's what people encounter all the time in their meetings or in their presentations, that somehow there are loaded questions thrown back at them, and then how to deal with this in a polite and professional way and not be overwhelmed by the feeling that they're being attacked or something like this, and then retaliating or trying to take on the audience, as it were. And that's obviously not a good place to go to, because you will alienate yourself, and that's a bad place to go. So I think this, even though maybe you would like to retaliate or say something back, it's just the right time where you have to try and diffuse the bomb and say, yes, that's a fair point. Yeah, and try and explain your reasoning behind it or whatever. Okay, number 4 is divide up. I said a few minutes ago that often questions are long-winded and they go into many seconds, and you're always trying to think, okay, what's going on here? Rebecca, the divide up, what does that do?
Yeah, you break it down into sections, you divide it up. And I think I was just thinking there, when you watch press conferences, often very loaded questions from the press to say, I don't know, politician, and often you notice they make notes as the question is coming. You can see them making notes, and then they answer it in 3 parts, let's say. So to your first point about, I don't know, immigration, let me say this. And they've mentally written that. So I think that's a good tip. You can also take notes. It's fine to do that and answer it in separate parts, because if it's a big question, otherwise it's not structured and you get a bit lost. So yeah, divide the question up if they've asked you a long question. So for example, you could say, okay, let's take them one at a time, or let me first of all go to your question about this, and secondly, you asked me about this. And it also shows you're listening, because if you forget the third part of their question, that kind of means, well, I wasn't listening. So I think take a note to each, what are they actually asking me, and divide it up. Yeah.
Okay, next one, number 5, we're at deflect. What does deflect mean, Birgit?
Yeah, this is that you point to someone who might be in a better position to answer that question. And that also, of course, happens a lot. So you might not be able to be or have every detail. And you can very well say Alice or Paul here, hopefully in the room, or people know him or her, might be the better person to answer that. Then passing the question on directly, or maybe postponing it to a later moment, or you pass it on directly and then the person will have to answer it. But of course, that means that person should feel happy about answering question. I think, yeah.
Just drop somebody in it. Can you answer that question?
You get in trouble. I wasn't prepared to take a question. Yeah, in a normal setting, I mean, everybody is up to sort question being put at them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what does the word defer mean? Number 6 in normal English, because also sometimes it's not just the sort of hours presentation situation. There's also has a normal meaning. So like deflect means to put in a different, that send in a different direction, right, as well. So defer, what does defer normally mean, Becca?
Defer would be to just postpone, really, to do something later, to kind of delay, postpone. So in this case, park the question for later on. So maybe it's coming up later in your presentation, or there's another thing. So you can say, well, thanks for the question, but I will come back to that later. I will address that later in my presentation. Or first of all, I need to answer this other one first, but I will come back to that question later. So yeah, defer it, just postpone it. So you can answer later. You've got more time to think, maybe. Yeah.
Or just say you'll come back to it later.
And then not do it.
That's accidentally forget.
I was thinking maybe a lot of people could use that all the time. I come back to that later.
Well, there'll always be somebody that will say, oh, you wanted to answer that question about. Yeah. Yes, I had planned to do that. Okay, the next one, number 7. So there's 2 more to go. Disarm.
Entwaffnen, I think. Yeah. You admit you don't know it yet. So
yet, important word, guys and gals, important word, yet.
Important. But you will make sure you'll get the information, and you could say, I don't know off the top of my head, so straight away, but I will look at it and I will come back to you. I think that's a very good strategy. Disarm, admit something that's building up trust, I think. Yeah. Better than tell a story or just.
Yeah, don't wing it. We would say, don't wing it, Don't just
what
pretend.
Does wing it mean? That's slang
wing
English,
something,
Rebecca.
That's good, some good slang there. To wing something is like you just pretend you know the answer and you talk a little bit of nonsense and hope that everyone, if you talk in and that you're really confident that everybody will believe you, but winging it, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it might be better to just say, I'm really sorry. I actually don't know that off the top of my head, but I can find out for you. I would always say that.
Yeah,
but if you give me, I will follow up and I will find that out for you. Yeah,
definitely.
That's also a very good phrase, the off the top of my head. Maybe make a note of that, guys, off the top of my head. And it also is abbreviated sometimes in Slack messages, isn't it? But I always get, so it must be OTTOMH.
I would not have a clue what someone would say. Did someone write that?
OTTOMH.
I'm not good at all the.
Wow.
No, I'm not very good at them, but apparently you see that. Yeah. Off the top of my head. Yes.
Double F. Off.
Yeah, off. Right.
We've done number 1, deal. Number 2, define. Number 3, diffuse. Number 4, divide up. Number 5, deflect. Number 6, defer. Number 7, disarm. The last one is decline. Birgit.
No, Rebecca, but I don't mind.
Oh, you're declining. She's declining, you see. She's declining.
No, it should
Come on.
Politely refusing. Yes.
You're declining, you see. You're doing it. Well done.
I can't speak to that specifically, but what I can talk about is this. Yeah, you're not willing to talk about something here, but that's fair enough, maybe in situations.
Yeah, if they ask something that's very confidential or a sensitive issue or off topic, I can't speak about that. We're here, but what I can tell you is, again, you see that in press conferences when they don't want to talk about specific things. Yeah.
But that's also important that you can say what I can talk about is,
Yeah.
right? You limit what you can't, but you also try to give them something to hopefully be happy with. And then what I can talk about is a good answer as well.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the 8.
That's the 8.
Very
the
useful.
D8.
Thank you, Dave.
The golden nugget.
Can I add something to the 8? I don't know. It's not a D.
It needs to be D.
It's not a D, unfortunately. Well, maybe it could be delay. I think Steve Jobs was famous for this, that people would ask him a question and he would take his time to answer. So sometimes there's examples where he waits something like 90 seconds, thinks about the question before he answers. I wouldn't recommend waiting 90 seconds unless you happen to be someone very well known. But it is okay to pause. It is okay to delay. You are entitled to think about a question. And I think people think they have to answer everything immediately to show their expertise. And it's okay to just delay and say, okay, that's a great question. Can you just give me a second to think about that? And then just take a few seconds to get your thoughts together. Okay, so I don't think there's a problem with that, especially if it's in another language. I think it's perfectly okay to just delay and wait. And going back to this defining, clarifying, if you haven't understood the question, better to ask and get the real question than just answer the completely wrong question. You know, people say, oh, but if I say, sorry, I didn't get your question, I look stupid. And I think, well, no, I think you look intelligent because you want to answer the right question. You look stupid if you just answer a question completely differently because you just didn't understand. That doesn't look stupid, but it looks more professional to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat that question again? Or sorry, I didn't quite hear that. You know, it's okay.
100%.
So I'm going to add a D for delay. So we got 9.
Guys, it's now 9. Okay, delay at the end.
The D9 cheat sheet.
Yeah, we have to change it. Oh, I have to change my whole webinar
no, it's okay.
now. Unbelievable.
It's okay, leave it. The D1, D8 plus 1. Okay, that was this week's recording. Very interesting input for business English situations. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Rebecca. And next time we're going to have a bit of a fun episode for change because we are recording on the 1st of April, which is April Fool's Day. So you play a fool on people, what we do here and in England as well, because we haven't spoken about slang. Yeah, so fancy wordings, things people use in informal situations. And I think we can learn a lot from Dave and Rebecca. I'm also going to search in my brain for some useful phrases. Of course, I can always ask the internet and Miss ChatGPT, or I'll come up. Well, I'm not sure whether I do use slang when I speak English. Not a lot. I don't think so. But yes, that's it. Hopefully you'll be listening again. Thanks for listening today, and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for pressing play today. If you enjoy our podcast, please share with your friends, your family, or your co-workers. Or you can also support us by giving us a thumbs up or a star rating or a review on whatever podcast platform you are using to listen to us. For questions and comments, you can also head over to our website, 3englishexperts.com. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your support. Have a great day and see you next time.